walk you through how to use your solar dye kit. This one is specially designed to dye yarn using nothing but plant power and sunshine. It's kind of cool. It's super easy, super fun, and every result is completely one of a kind. So let's get going. And you have your jar with your yarn. If you have a big one like this, or maybe your flowers are inside if you have a different flower. This is Dyer's chamomile. It gives you a lovely yellow. We're going to put that to the side. And we're also going to put down a little towel because that way everything stays nice and clean, and it actually helps the yarn when we lay it out. So you have your 2-piece lid, put that to the side. You have your skein of yarn. You have your instructions. Now remember I told you all you have to do is add water, but you really should watch this video to see exactly how to add that water, or at least read the instructions on how to add that water, because it is important how we do it and when we do it. We also have a tea bag. Now you may have a big tea bag or you may have a little tea bag. Again, depending on what flowers you have, which kit you have. For this one, we need the big one. And you have 2 lovely little pieces of string. So, now we're going to lay out our yarn. So we just open up the skein, let it untwirl, and put your hands in so that it's like a donut, and lay it down. You'll notice that you have 3 ties. One of your ties is just a little tie by itself. A second tie is a tie by itself. And the third tie has all sorts of things going on. And what this is the beginning and the end of the skein, and also tying it. The reason the ties are there is to keep your yarn from getting tangled. I've given you 2 extra pieces of string so that you can tie it a little bit more and really keep it from getting tangled. So what you're going to do there is you're going to just kind of open it up a little bit, split it in half, and you go over and under on one side, and you've made a figure 8. Now you can just tie a little knot in there, however you like to tie a knot, but you want to make sure that it's loose so that if you spread open all of the yarn, it has plenty of room to go and do. The reason for that is if you tie it really tight, like this, see how it's all bunched up? Then you're going to have problems with how your dye is attaching to your yarn, and you don't want problems, so keep it nice and loose. And we'll do our other one, and you can decide where you want to put your ties. I just kind of do a little visual and say, okay, I could use one here, I could use one there. And when I do my dyeing, I actually do all of my skeins with 3 or 4 ties, because I'm not going to reskein everything. That's just way too much work, and frankly, I don't have enough time in my day for that. So here, we are now tied, and we are ready to progress to the next step. Okay, so now we're ready to wet out our yarn. You have a choice of either using the jar it came with, or another bowl or some other container that the yarn will move freely in. I highly recommend using another container. You're not contaminating it with anything, you're literally just using water. Warm water is always preferable, and so that's what we're using now. So I take my yarn and I put it in the bowl, and here's my warm water, and we pour it in. And you see how I'm squishing it? I'd like it to absorb the water, and by squishing it gently, I'm not agitating, I'm not making a mess, I'm going to get rid of all the little white spots. Now if you look carefully, you can see I have some white spots. Can you see those white spots? And when all those white spots, and as I'm squeezing, that helps get rid of the white spots. And when all those little white spots are gone, then we'll be ready to put our yarn in our jar. Now, if you're using your jar for your container, that's totally fine. Same thing. You want to get your hand in there, or you want to use a stick. You want to squeeze your yarn so that you get your white spots out and let that sit. Now, let's assume you're going to use a bowl like I recommend. We can let that sit and do its thing. So we can now move on to our dye flowers and start making our tea bath. What you do is open up, and I know you're thinking you have a smaller bag and you have that tiny tea bag. How is it ever going to fit? It will fit. I made sure that it will fit. So I just literally empty it right into my tea bag. I kind of stuff it in there a little bit so I don't make a mess all over the place. And I use tea bags for my dyeing all the time. It's rare if I'm going to put my dye stuffs in with my yarn that I do not. A lot of times I will do a completely separate dye bath and then I don't use a tea bag. So it just kind of depends. So see, look here, how nicely that fits. It fits so well. I am going to squish it down a little bit. Yes, my fingers are a little wet and I'm getting full of flowers, but so what? And then pull the sides of your tea bag. You can really squish it down a bit. Get it into your tea bag so that you can close it very, very well. Take the two ends, just like you're tying your shoes, and just do one of those. That's it. All you have to do. Now, we can put our tea bag into our jar and just stuff it. You're not hurting anybody. And there it is. Now remember, I recommended warm water to start with your yarn. And when you use the warm-hot method or warm-warm, try to get water off the boil because that works really, really well. And pour it over your tea bag because now you're making like a sun tea. You can push it down. The dye is already starting to extract out of the dye flowers. The longer it sits in hot water, and of course in the sun because solar dyeing is sun powered, the more the dye will continue to extract over a few days. So there, now we have that started, and I can see in here that the tea bag has stayed nice and closed the way I want it to, so that I don't get all those lovely little bits and pieces of veggie matter all over my yarn, because I don't have enough time to pull that stuff out of there, and I'm sure it would annoy you as well. So that's why I always recommend using a tea bag. Okay, so now our yarn has been soaking, and you can see that all the little white spots are gone. And what we will do is just gently pick it up. You don't have to be too concerned, and we're going to gently squeeze out the water. We're not wringing, we're not twisting, we are just letting the water go back into the container. Now, if you've used your jar, you probably should do that over the sink, because otherwise it might get a little bit messy. But again, that's why I use a towel underneath to contain the mess. So, now we're going to stick it in our jar. Oh, and quick, hey, look at all the color that's been coming out while it's been sitting and steeping. Isn't that lovely? It's happening. We have the magic power of plants working here. So now we're going to stick our yarn in, and it doesn't really matter how you stick it in as long as it all fits. And I'm just pushing it down gently. I will push it down a little bit more with my spoon. And now we can take the rest of our nice warm water, doesn't have to be super hot, and we're going to fill up our jar until we get to the bottom of the collar here. It's always a good area. And you can see, first I'll put the lid on so I don't spill water everywhere. The two-piece lid, just give it a nice little crank so that it's nice and tight. You can see most of the dye color is down here at the bottom because that's where the tea bag is, and it's starting to come up into the skein. And you're going to let it sit in a nice warm sunny place, and it's going to get full of color. I'm just going to stick my container in another container so I don't make a mess all over here, because that just annoys me. So as we're lifting, we can again very gently squeeze out the dye bath and get our yarn ready for rinsing. And you see, we got some nice color going on. Now, if you have some other pre-mordanted yarn or silk or anything like that, you can keep this dye bath and just stick that right in. And again, use it more solar dyeing, because you can see there's plenty of dye left in the jar. So now we're going to just take it and put it in our warmish, coolish water, and we're going to start to do a little bit of a rinse. We just rinse a little bit, and we squeeze nice and gently. We don't wring, we don't twist. And we're done. Congratulations. You just dyed your first skein of yarn using the power of plants.